What is the soul? This is a question that I'm sitting with at the minute, and by all means, I do not claim to have the answer. But I think it is a very important question that, after 30 years of life, I've only just started to kind of comprehend and wonder about. And supposedly I've had a soul for all 30 years, but I've ignored it. And what is the price of that? Like, what are the consequences of that? And all of the other things that unfold of it. These are what are kind of racking my brain at the minute. So today I'm going to spend some time and try to unpack it. Try to spend some time really thinking about what is the soul. And I've seen life come into this world and life leave this world by this point in my life. And there is definitely something that I can point to be what I think is a soul. But to try to contextualize that is ridiculous. I'm going to try to anyway. And I'm going to try to unpack all of the wacky things that come along with it. So hopefully this is an interesting one. If anything, it might prove I'm a bit crazy, but hey ho, all the best people are, I guess. Let's go get into this one. What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasers podcast, and I'm your host, John. On this episode, I'm thinking about what is the soul. And it's something that, like I said, I've been thinking about a fair bit lately, but really hasn't come across my mind too much for most of my life. And to start this off, I wonder how many people are like that. They say the majority of the world doesn't have, or a significant portion anyway, doesn't have an inner monologue. And I do, and I've still kind of failed to realize that there's a soul in there as well that's separate from my inner monologue. And just kind of not knowing it's there. Imagine you had a third hand hiding on your back and you went 30 years throughout your life and you realized, oh damn, I've got a whole nother limb over here that you've failed to use. How many times in life would that have been useful to you? I know this is probably a bit of a wacky way of saying it, but you get what I mean. There's this unused part of yourself that if you haven't realized, you've got this soul that is you, but it's also separate from you and different from you. If I was to use myself as an example, like I always do, there's a voice in my head, yes, that is distinctly John. It's me just as if I'm talking to you now, just talking through my thoughts, just not making any sound. But then there's something else. When I shut up a little bit, there's another voice that comes through. And in all honesty, it's probably hard for me to put a specific voice on it. And there's probably things that taint that idea of what that voice is. It could be my mood or people that I've been talking to or whatever else. So I think that voice in itself doesn't have one voice. It has multiple, at least for me. And I was delving into a Carl Jung book the other day, and he was basically saying how the male's soul is feminine and the female soul is masculine. And to an extent, I understand that. It kind of argues that point of balance and equilibrium. If to the outside world you're projecting masculine or feminine, to the inner world you would project the opposite, to try to find a kind of equilibrium in between, which from a logic standpoint makes a lot of sense. For me, I'm always go, 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 go. I would say I predominantly think in the masculine, and that's very logical, very systematic, A, B, C, D, let's go. But it's more than likely the feminine voice in the back of my head that says, okay, but what are the consequences of these actions? So having that duality between all of us, and if I was a woman sitting here, it would be probably the other way. I'm not a woman, I can't speak for that. But to at least understand that you have this kind of duality within yourself is a very powerful thing. It's like discovering a new limb. So once you realize it, it's then about nurturing it, strengthening it, training it, and bringing it out. Because again, if we're always trying to find this kind of equilibrium, this point of homeostasis in life, listening to both parts of yourself, whether it be the good and the bad, the masculine and the feminine, the up and the down, whatever you want to contextualize it as, listening to that duality and trying to find the middle, to me, is always going to give you the best possible outcome, because you've looked at both sides. You've taken the best from each and hopefully put it into action. So if you can take the best from the masculine and the best from the feminine, what you should end up with is the best of each. And if this ends up being the best version of yourself, like if I put myself in this again, so when I'm in the gym, I want to be the most aggressive version of myself. I want to be powerful. I want to be mean. I want to bite people's noses off, figuratively speaking. Like that is a time and a place. That's very much like being in the battle arena. Like that's where you're going to war, figuratively speaking again. And that's where I want to be mean. But when I'm with my daughter, that's when I want to be softer. I don't want to be that aggressive person. I want to be that soft, nurturing person. And that is more attributed to the feminine. So understanding that you've got these pushes and pulls within yourself and understanding their importance more than anything. Like, if you've gone from ignoring them to then realizing that they're there and going, okay, cool, well, why is this here? Well, nothing in life is without purpose. So if you've got that duality, it's there to be listened to, whether it's good or bad. Like, sometimes I can be my harshest critic, and it is awful listening to the things that I say to myself in my head. But listening to those things, they're real. They come from somewhere. And whether they be true or not, like sometimes you'll propose the question simply to shoot it down, just to confirm where you are. Like, imagine you're on a long drive or whatever else, and you're on the motorway, and you know you're on a road for 80 miles, or however many kilometers if you're in another country. And somebody just keeps going, yeah, still straight ahead. Every once in a while, they just say, still straight ahead. Like, you know you're on the road for a long time, but every once in a while, it's nice to just check in and make sure you are still on the path. Nothing's come up, and there's not been no diversions on the road or whatever else. So sometimes that you're asking yourself that question for that reaffirming nature, but other times it is an honest critic, and like that's why I say, like, sometimes it does feel like me criticizing myself, but sometimes it feels like there's something outside of myself, which those criticisms hit deeper. Like the things that I say that, again, I identify as the John voice, that is very much dismissible as like just self-talk or whatever else. But some of those deeper thoughts, deeper questions that have that other voice, they're the ones that really kind of hit home. Though they sit with me for longer, and they really do. If they're criticisms, they make me really question it. But that's why they're so important to listen to, because they actually make you stop and take a beat. And not everything in life does. So when you actually stop and give it that attention it needs, like, there's a reason it's asking for that attention. And if your soul is asking for your attention, it needs it. So like, listen. And it's not always going to be easy to listen. And like, if you're a 90s baby, think of your soul as like a little Tamagotchi that you got to keep alive. Most people do think of it as something separate from themselves, but it is very much within you. Like, you can never let go of that little Tamagotchi. And if that little Tamagotchi goes, you go. Like, there's so many things where it's like the soul is outside of yourself, but it's also inside of yourself. Like, speaking now, I know this isn't my soul speaking, but there's little background voices, or I still know that I've got a soul. I still know that I've got that kind of fire or that energy or light within me. And it varies in intensity. Like, there are times, like I say, like when I'm really going to the extremes, whether it be like happiness or anger or enjoyment or whatever it is, where like your soul feels alive. Like when you're doing something that feels genuinely true to you, when you feel giddy, when you feel excited, when you feel at your absolute peak, like you feel like your soul's bigger than it usually is. And I think that when you realize that and you kind of, that's how you find your passions in life and that. Like I say, like sometimes, like when I'm training, I feel that passion, I feel that fire. When I'm driving, I feel that fire. When I'm, oh, damn it, I just lost it. um, when I'm having like passionate conversations with people, just delving into this, that, and everything else, like I feel invigorated in those moments. That's when my soul feels alive. For the most part, other than that, like when I'm going through like mundane tasks, doing chores around the house, doing this, that, or whatever else, my soul feels like on idle. But when you find something that you're passionate about, when you're around people that bring out that passion or you engage with, you literally feel that other side of you grow. And if you ignore that, it's almost just like, oh yeah, cool, I had a good time or whatever else. But when you realize there's either things or people that invigorate you and kind of ignite your soul, make your soul want to be better, make you want to be better, and just kind of realizing that kind of true nature of yourself, like so much of life is distraction. Like I say, like I can honestly say that I've been through 30 years of life and not kind of truly comprehended what my soul is. And most of my life has been busy trying to play catch up, trying to get to here, there, and everywhere else, and not actually taking a beat to say, okay, well, where am I going first? Like, again, to relate it into something like driving. If you was to take a car on a long journey, but you don't know what car you're taking, you don't know how far you've got to go or whatever, you don't know all of the details of it, how are you going to prepare? So now if you don't know the details of yourself, how are you going to prepare yourself for a journey through life? So what does invigorate your soul? What diminishes your soul? Are you a social person? Are you not a social person? Are you somebody that learns visually, verbally? What? Like all of these like questions about yourself, the more you ask them, the more of an understanding you'll have about yourself. And then you'll kind of find that there's, like I say, there's things that excite John, and then there's things that there's things that excite John, and then there's things that excite John's soul. And the two are separate. And the like not everything that excites John is good for the soul, and not everything that excites my soul is deemed good for John. But there's a balance on. I can't get my words out this morning. Sorry. There's a balance between the kind of the extremes of each. And if you do something to nurture the soul and you do something to nurture yourself and you find that balance, you find that compromise, the two start working together and you become more complete. Like with anything, there's going to be different aspects of life in which you need to find that balance, whether it be with eating or your mentality or your like even down to the aspect of like learning. Most people think learning stops after school when really that's your governmental learning or whatever, like the learning that you have to do for society. But what about your learning about life? Like school doesn't teach you about life. School doesn't teach you about paying bills, how to survive relationships, how to make relationships, how to be a parent, how to do this, how to do that. Like there is so much that you're not taught that is far more applicable to life as a whole. Like how to manage your emotions, how to manage your finances, how to manage grief, how to manage transitions in life in varying aspects, whether it be moving areas, moving jobs, or whatever else. Like there's all of these things that are kind of guaranteed in life. You're not prepared for essentially. So when do you take the time to consider these things? Get do you just get rushed into the kind of hustle and bustle of work and the day-to-day life? Do you take a leap year, a gap year or whatever and go traveling for a year and just see the world, but not actually think about you? Like, again, there seems to be like a scarcity of time in the world. But reality is, we've all got the same time. Who's to say that you have to live life the way that you're living it or the way that somebody else is living it? As long as there is a beat in your chest and breath in your lungs, you can live life however you want. If you want to be nomadic, if you want to be somebody that travels around and just sees the world and explores, meets different people and everything else, it's well within your possibilities. If you want to put down roots somewhere, if you want to live a couple years here, a couple years there, like there is so many possibilities in life. Your only limiting factor is yourself. So once you kind of get on that best page with yourself and find out what you truly want, that's your first step to getting there. Like once you first realize like, oh damn, I have a soul, I have this other part of me that is invigorated by different aspects of life, that wants different things from myself. Maybe I should listen to that, because we don't always know what's best for us. And that's probably a hard realization for a lot of people, because we all like to think that we know what's best. But most people are unhappy. So do you really know what's best? If you're unhappy and you're telling yourself you know what's best in the world, you've really got to sit down and talk to your soul, because I think they got some hard truths for you. It's all about that kind of realizing it and starting that work. No matter how much mess there is to clean up, once you start cleaning up, it starts improving and it snowballs over time and things look better. Like if you've got a cluttered house, once you start tidying one room, that's one room less that's cluttered. You keep doing that and the whole house is tidy. The same is with life, the same is with your mentality. Once you start cleaning it up, once you start asking yourself, what are your passions? What charges your soul? What nurtures your soul? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want from life? Not necessarily what does life want from you or what does society want from you, but the deeper questions. Me and Dave have done an episode the other day on what are your passions. Now, if you can actually sit there and ask yourself, like, what ignites your soul? What makes you feel alive? And how can you do that more? I mean, that's not a bad question in my mind. That's something that, even if you're not there now, it's a way that, or it's something to work towards. Like I say, like, I would love to take cars around tracks and just really enjoy going fast and the power of an engine and just that adrenaline rush. But it's not in my reality now. Doesn't mean I can't work towards it, doesn't mean I can't make time for it in the future. But if I never realized it, I'd have never thought about working towards it. I'd have never put it in any, I'd have never put anything in motion to make it a reality. So actually taking that time to sit down and figure out what does nurture your soul, what makes your soul feel excited, what makes you feel excited, and where's that middle ground? So like I say, like that driving cars fast and being all giddy and like going skydiving or whatever else, all of that stuff, that's almost like John excitement. There is parts of which like my soul would be kind of nurtured as well, but maybe not so much in going fast. I think that's probably a John indulgence. But like skydiving, if I went skydiving, that would be a John indulgence because I find it exciting and exhilarating and all of that stuff. But then my soul would get to see the world from a whole new perspective. It would get to fall through the clouds and just, that would be something completely different that would give me a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of appreciation in my mind. And I think that's an action that I would take, if I took in life, would benefit both. But then on the counterpart, I wouldn't do bungee jumping. I'd rather trust a parachute over an elastic band. But that's a tangent anyway. But this whole thing is like, there's that's the soul is that little voice in the back of your head that sometimes you block out, sometimes you're just like, what was that passing for, or what else? But it comes from somewhere. So the more you listen to it, the more you realize it, the louder and clearer it becomes. And then eventually you get to this point where you can almost talk to it, or at least reason with it. And once you do that, once you understand there is this kind of duality in yourself and you work towards that equilibrium, you kind of start to feel a little bit more complete. Like I say, like it really is like denying a part of yourself. Like you can't deny that the soul is there. If you was to get scientific with it or whatever, they've measured people at the moment of death and they literally lose like a cup, like I think it's like 3 ounces or whatever it is. But there is something measurable in terms of weight. But more than that, there's some like, so when you have a EKG, electric, damn it, I'm butchering my words this morning. Sorry, I haven't had breakfast and it's been a long one. But anyway, back on topic. So when you have an EKG, that's not reading your like pulse or how many times your heart pulsates. That's reading the electric impulse. So obviously when somebody dies, that electric impulse completely goes. So even if you're not measuring a physical weight of somebody's body, you can measure that there's no longer an energy frequency within that body. So that is the soul, that energy frequency, that kind of electricity that keeps you alive, that keeps that beat in your chest, that makes that hair stand up on the back of your neck when you get goosebumps or whatever else. Like there is electricity within all of us that is that soul, that is that life energy. So you can't deny it's there. So take that time to listen to it. Take the time to realize that it's an actual part of yourself. There's more to you than there. You've got a pilot and a co-pilot. And sometimes they switch seats. And sometimes that's for the best. Like, I just kind of got a Jesus take the wheel image run through my head, but almost with your soul. Anyway, I'm going on tangents. I need to have breakfast and I need to wrap this bad boy up. So the seed for this episode is take some time and see if you can bring out that little voice in the back of your head. See if you can sit there for 5-10 minutes and just sit with your thoughts. See if that little voice comes through and see what it has to say. It might not be pleasant at first, but that might be for multiple reasons. It could be for you to challenge it or for you to accept it. But again, the important aspect of it is sitting with those questions, asking yourself these things and seeing them through. Like if you're somebody that does want to contemplate the deeper parts of life, you have to start with yourself. Once you start with that deeper understanding of yourself, you can justify the deeper understanding of the world and the things around you. Like if you can't understand the dualities in yourself, how can you understand dualities in other people or in nature or in the greater world as a whole? Like all of these things are ebbs and flows throughout life. So start small, start with yourself, and then hopefully you'll understand the world as a greater as a whole. And hopefully the more we understand the whole world, the better it becomes for all of us. Because I do think with greater understanding becomes greater execution and greater living for all. So hopefully we can all understand our lives and ourselves a little bit better. But all the best, and I'll catch you on the next one.